So I'd mentioned that I had pulled the transmission off the car and I had done a new retainer sleeve where you take the face plate off the T56. You replace this retainer sleeve that the throwout bearing rides on. And I had bought a new clutch, and it was a Valero clutch, so it would be original to the car, even though it was slightly different. But that clutch actually had problems. You push the fork all the way forward, it would hit that pressure plate, and it was just messed up. And it probably could have used an adjustable pivot ball, but it shouldn't have done that because it was a stock replacement Valero clutch, which is what the Cobras should have come with. If you look on the border of that pressure plate, you can see all the scratch marks where it was contacting the clutch fork. And the clutch disc actually ate itself when the flywheel had a couple of the rivets sticking out. And so I ordered a whole bunch of new parts, including an X pipe and a brand new Ford Performance flywheel, and I pulled the transmission off the car again. And this time I just bought everything new. Just wanted a basic spec stage 1 clutch, so it would be like the factory feel, as close to stock as I could get it. And I got a brand new Ford Racing flywheel so that I wouldn't have any issues. So I'd been enjoying my Cobra, driving it around, and I have a few pictures of it here at like Walmart where, I take the car and maybe I parked like a jerk a couple times, but it's one of those situations where I wasn't planning on going there, but we were going for a family drive and we popped in just for a few minutes, and I really just didn't want somebody to bump into the car. And sometimes you'll get people who will like key your car if you park weird or whatever, and so I'm hoping that that wouldn't happen. But for the most part, I think people would just walk by and just notice. Maybe they say something like, "Oh, that guy doesn't know how to park" or whatever. But it's no big deal. It's once every so often that I take it to a Walmart parking lot. But there was a time that I went to In-N-Out, and this picture I put up a few times just, to get conversation going, because it's like, I can't believe someone would park like this, like I parked far over because there's like the trash can next to the Cobra and it had like the extra lines in the parking lot. So I parked a little bit over there so it'd save some room, and then this guy parked like really close to the car and kind of over the line when he didn't have to. I left him a full parking spot, but he parked that way anyway. And I don't know, maybe he just came and parked next to me without looking at the lines. Maybe some people don't consider the lines in the parking lot. They just park next to a car where they think it has enough room. I mean, I guess there was probably enough room between our cars that it didn't matter. But every time I come across this picture, I'm just like, oh boy, And speaking of In-N-Out, I took this picture while I was in there. Every In-N-Out I go to has this poster of a GT350. It says Southern California, and then it shows the Shelby GT350 and some other cars. The yellow one possibly is a GTO. It's hard to tell. But anyway, I really like this picture, and every time I go to an In-N-Out, I think of this because it's a Mustang and going to In-N-Out, and that's just something I like to do as well. And this poster becomes even more fun for me because I bought my torch red Terminator Cobra in Southern California, and on the way home I stopped at an In-N-Out. So here's a picture of the car there, and we actually didn't eat there that day because of the line that was so big. We went across the street and ate, but I've stopped at that In-N-Out several times, especially bringing back the GT350s that we've bought in California with my friends. So going to In-N-Out is fun to see the Shelby pictures and the thinking about the Mustang history, and it's been a long time that's been a well-bonded American tradition. Is fast food and fast cars, especially Mustangs. And speaking of fast cars, the Cobra put a whooping on this Tiburon, which I know is kind of puppy kicking, but the guy was very aggressive and thought that he was faster than the Cobra. And hey, it's all part of the history. Look at that bright orange spoiler leaving that Tiburon in the dust. So I remember seeing this AC Cobra replica driving around town, and he came up next to me, and I was like, hey, cool, nice AC Cobra. And he probably doesn't understand what a competition orange Terminator is either. He just kind of drove past me and wouldn't look over. It's fun to see people out enjoying their cars, and he probably thinks his car is the coolest car in the world, and I probably feel the same about mine. But anyway, it's just an instance of driving down the road and seeing other people enjoy their cars on a nice day. Now, I had talked about this competition orange Cobra with the stripes on it, which I believe were painted on, and I found these higher quality pictures, so I wanted to share those. And as we were talking about it, I just thought about how I mentioned that some people just can't leave the competition orange color alone. For example, this Coyote sitting here, I don't think this is the same car. This might have actually been a Rouge that was sold at our dealership. At the time, our dealership here in town was the highest volume Rouge dealer in the country. I found that very difficult to believe, but it was true because I had talked to salesmen and people who knew the numbers. And as far as I know, it was true. But here's an example too of a nice looking Rouge, and I mentioned how it's competition orange and they can't help but like put stripes and stuff all over it. Now again, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or bash on their car or whatever. It was just a point being made that I see a lot of competition orange cars that people just can't leave alone. As a matter of fact, there's another one here in town they painted half of it black, like where the stripes would go on this one. It's like the exact same location. They painted half the car black and the other they left it orange, and it just looked really terrible, and I just don't see why people would do that. But I guess orange is a color that people just look at it and they just, like, their hand starts twitching and they just be like, I gotta do something to it, where I'm like, just leave it alone. And I know this car kind of got some criticism from, people I knew. They're like, why does it say Cobra Jet on it? It's a Rouge. It has nothing to do with being a Cobra Jet, and Cobra Jets are not street legal and they're full drag cars, and why is there Cobra snakes on a Rouge? And I felt the same way. I thought it was kind of awkward, and the guy who owned it just decided he wanted to put that all over it. But it confuses people because then some people are like, hey, I saw a Cobra Jet, it was so cool, like, you gotta see this car. And then I'll go to a car meet and see it. I'm like, well, that's not really a Cobra Jet. And I know some people, it really bothered them. So again, not trying to trash on anybody's decisions or what they want to do with their own car. That's their business. But it's just something I see. And having a competition orange Cobra myself, then I'm just looking at it like, why would you do that? And speaking of Cobras with stripes on them, or competition orange with stripes, I did mention this car earlier, but I did not have the picture until now. I've been spending hours and hours sifting through terabytes of pictures and videos that I have of Mustangs and Terminators and Cobras and everything that I have. So I did finally come across this picture, and I had made the conversation about this car earlier. Again, to carry on what I say about Comp Orange and people having to like put stripes or stickers or whatever on it, and that happened to my own car as well from the first owner. But this is just an example of that. And so this car, the person who owned it did get the stripes off. I believe they repainted sections of the car, and that's what I talked about earlier. But this is how good it looks now. See? Nice Comp Orange Cobra. And I was very excited for this person when they had the car. The car had been sold since then, so I don't know who owns it now, but I had talked to the person who owned it, and it was a really cool car, and it looked good. And now this one isn't as drastic, but here's another Comp Orange car that has stickers on it. Now this front sticker is Mustang Magic, and that's where the famous black snake bite 2 Cobra was from, the Terminator that does the huge burnout in all the videos and stuff. I've done a story about that car, and the car is actually still around now. It now belongs to the new owner of Mustang Magic, and the car has made some appearances at some car shows. It is a turbo car now, which some people are happy about, some people aren't, because it's iconic that it had the supercharger scream of the Kenny Bell. Everybody wants Kenny Bells because of this car. But anyway, that was just kind of the decision that was the way it was explained to me by the new owner, is that the old snake bite was what it was, but this is a snake bite of the future. It kind of shows where you can take these cars when you do turbos and stuff with them. So that's a very big item of controversy, because a lot of people just love this car for what it was, not for what it is to be, or some people didn't want it to be changed from what it was. Now, as far as this competition orange Cobra goes, you can see it actually has a SVTOA sticker in the windshield. Looks like it's well cared for. They've added the larger snakes on the side for like the GT500, the newer style. It had the big 3D snake on the front. My friend actually bought a Terminator that had that on there, and he just couldn't stand it. Had it taken off and sold it to somebody. He just kept going on and on about how ugly it was. I think that was kind of funny. You can also see it has a number by the driver's side headlight there. Maybe it's the production number of the car or some kind of number like that, what the Celine's do. And so I personally wouldn't even put that on my car like that. It belongs on a Celine, but not on a Cobra. But anyway, that's just my preference. And some FR 500 style wheels. The only complaint I really have is the hood pins. I just don't like when people drill holes in factory hoods. It's just me, you know. You can see it has a cage inside and aftermarket seats. So I'm sure this was a fast car. It had some stuff done to it. But anyway, it's kind of cool to see a competition orange Cobra. And that's part of the Mustang magic history. Now, I did talk about this comp orange that had this Cobra snakeskin pattern airbrushed into the back bumper, and I did find other pictures of the car with that removed, and I do remember now that the guy had actually repainted the back bumper to remedy that, so that was something I did want to bring up, some housekeeping items. And a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? I remember looking at this competition orange Cobra for sale and looking closely and saying, look at that, the license plate frame actually says Team Ford Las Vegas, which is where my blue Mach 1 came from originally. And this car was in Florida for sale. And I remember looking at this car and thinking about how beautiful it was. And it was a higher priced, lower mileage car, and it just looked really good, lowered just right and everything. And so I have so many pictures of these competition orange Cobras saved onto my hard drives, and so it's fun to go through and look at these. And I remember this was the day that he sold it, and there were pictures of it on the trailer going away, and people saying, you are going to regret that. And he said, I already am. And I remember that. And so, you know, you see pictures like that, and then this one of that other comp orange where he had both the Mach 1 and the Terminator. Nice one doing a burnout. And I did talk about this one here. This was the one here in Utah that was wrecked on the driver's side really bad. And you know, the owner still has it, the guy who bought it from the guy who fixed it. And it was tucked away in the garage and it looked really nice. Now, my friend from northern Utah who had spotted this competition orange Cobra with the orange wheels on it, he had a pretty good eye for it. And he's not way into cars, and so like when he tells me he sees a competition orange Terminator, sometimes I'm a little skeptical that it really is one because there just aren't many here. Especially in Utah, there's only a couple of them here. And he messaged me one day and said, hey, I saw a competition orange Terminator Cobra today at soccer practice with the kids. And I was really skeptical that it was really an orange Terminator because that's just something you never hear about. You know, I'm like, oh, you know, are you sure it was a Cobra? And he sent me this picture, and I was like, wow, it's a Terminator Cobra. And he said it was competition orange. It's a convertible, so it's one of 72. And so I couldn't believe that he had spotted this car, and it was just randomly parked at soccer practice, and he told me it was pretty dirty. He said he could see where kids had been riding on it in the dirt and the, you know, probably the weather up there. It kind of snows and the roads get kind of grimy and stuff, and so it looked pretty dirty. And I was actually pretty shocked to see that somebody was, you know, just using this car and kind of not taking very good care of it in this sense. You could even see the side skirts were just really filthy and stuff. It looked like it hadn't been washed for a while. And so at the time of me seeing this, I was pretty shocked, and I couldn't believe that there was an orange Cobra like this that was, you know, dirty and just kind of sitting there. And I didn't know who owned it. Maybe somebody bought it new and just wasn't very like vocal about the car, never shared it on any forums, never was on the competition orange Facebook pages or anything, and just it's one of those cars that's just kind of scattered out there and never really talked about. And so for a car that's one out of 72, I was very surprised that it was in this condition and that it was, you know, dirty and stuff. Now, I didn't know at the time, but it was the same car as the one I'm talking about here, that was tucked away in the garage. And so I wouldn't have expected this to have been the same car. The other one was on different wheels, like in the other picture. And so here it is on stock wheels, and it looked like just a stock Cobra sitting there. And so um, I was a little taken away and surprised, and so I posted it on the SVT Cobra Competition Orange Facebook page. And you need to be a owner of one of these cars to be on that page. And so I posted this car and said, "Wow, I can't believe there's like a filthy convertible Comp Orange that my friend just spotted, up in northern Utah." And the owner of the car was on the page, and he's like, "Hey, stop talking crap on me," And I felt really bad. I wasn't trying to talk crap. I was just shocked to see one of these cars like this, that was kind of filthy, and the way my friend described it with like kids riding on it and stuff. And it's just something that a very low mile collectible car doesn't usually get. Now the owner was like, "Hey, it's been wrecked before. I drive it. It's my car. I can do what I want with it, and that's fine." And I did not intend to offend anybody by that, so I apologize if that's the way I came off. And I don't want to ever make anybody feel bad or say anything that would be controversial to them. So that's just a quick little story of my friend actually finding a Comp Orange Cobra in the wild, and you just don't ever hear about that. I've never come across a Comp Orange Cobra just sitting in a parking lot somewhere, and I probably never will. And so it's funny because my friend had spotted that one with the orange wheels on it, and he knew what he saw, and he's like, "Hey, that's a competition orange Cobra," and he knew I had one back then, and he started looking to buy a Terminator because he thought they were cool, but he never ended up buying one. But um, I have people, all the time tell me they see Mustangs of different kinds and Mach 1s and GTs and stuff, especially around town. And so it's kind of fun when you have all these eyes out there looking and keeping tabs on stuff and reporting back to me when they find something they like. And I don't ask them to do that. They just do it, and it's nice of them to show me that. It's kind of fun. So anyway, that was kind of a story about this, and it was kind of a touchy subject because I wasn't trying to be rude about it, but like I said, the owner didn't take nicely to me talking about how dirty their car was. And so I'll just include that here in the history as I'm making these competition orange videos, but I want to do it in a way that's not disrespectful or anything. So that's the story about that car recently, my friend finding it in public. And something I did want to bring up as well, I talked about this Sonic Blue Terminator Cobra that was in all the magazines, and there were different pictures of it, and I showed the magazine I had from Hot Rod Magazine. And this was like a car that Ford gave out to the magazines to take pictures of, and some of them had the same pictures and just wrote articles about it. But I did recently see somebody had posted a picture of this one, and it was one I had seen, and I hadn't seen it for a long time. Is this picture of it doing the burnout from the side, and I really liked that picture, so I just wanted to share that since I had shared the other pictures of this car in my first video in this series about my competition orange Cobra. So I had mentioned that after college, my friend invited me to work with him on a side job doing mobile detailing. And he had a really great business doing that. I would take the Bullet and go park in a lot of RV resorts and do a lot of RVs. We did a lot of cars as well, and I would drive the Bullet and meet him in different places around town. It was really fun to get to know different spots of town this way. But I mostly drove the Bullet to these places, and one of his clients had this really beautiful house with a ginormous driveway. And I would go up there with the Bullet and park it there, and it looked great up there. And again, I just need to stress that the Bullet and the other Mach 1s I had, which I'll show here in a second, were cars that I could use in daily drive, and it kept the miles off the Terminator, and it kept it from having to be out in the elements. And it was really nice to have these other Mustangs that I enjoyed driving and had a lot of fun with, and I have stories about them. I love those cars. And so just to set the record straight, there have been over 20 Mustangs like this in my life that I've enjoyed, and so the Orange Cobra has had the privilege of being able to stay home in the garage while I drive these other ones and use them throughout the time, and made a lot of memories with them. Now, in every car culture, whether it's Corvettes or Mustangs or whatever it may be, there is kind of this hierarchy thing going on where there's people who have, the base models, and then there's people who have, the V8, or in this case, like a GT or a Bullet. And then there's maybe a Mach 1, and then the Cobra. And so the people who have the Cobras sometimes, and I'm not saying this is everybody, but sometimes there's this idea that, well, I'm better than the lower trim level cars, and the people down below with the lower trim cars kind of don't like the guys with the higher trim cars. Maybe they think they're jerks because they think they have the better one. And it's the same with other cars. Like I said, the Corvette, base model Corvette guy, it's a great car. Maybe the guy with the Z06 is like, well, mine's better. I've seen some Z06 owners like say that recently, where they're pretty jerky to the base model guys. And then you got the guy with the ZR1, and he's like, oh, you guys are all nothing compared to the ZR1. And I'm not saying everybody's like that. I know there are great people who own these cars, but I'm just trying to make the point that I did end up getting the Terminator Cobra, which for the New Age Mustang is the top dog. But I also live the life of the lower trim level cars and respect them and love them. And I daily drive a stock automatic GT, which I really like. And it's a great car. Now, I can see the difference between all these cars, and the Terminator is the greatest of all of them. But unfortunately, you have a little rivalry on the forums and the Facebook pages, and you have a lot of the two valve GT guys that want to build theirs up, and their goal is to beat up on a Cobra or be faster or something. And I really dislike all the tension that's on there, and you get a lot of hatred and stuff, which I want us to all be friends because we have the same car and we all love the Mustang. And so I just wanted to talk about that just for a little bit because it's something that's on my mind constantly, but also show that, I've had over 20 of these cars, and even though I had the greater trim level Cobra, I still wanted to buy other ones. And even after I bought my Cobra, I've bought GTs and Mach 1s and lesser trim cars because they're all very cool cars in their own ways. But this was one of my friend's clients, and he was a car guy. He had a GT500, like a 2014 gray one, and he had a Nova that was gray as well, and a bunch of interesting things like a Kenny Bell supercharged LS3 sand rail that he would take to Glamis, and a bunch of places to go out in the sand with. And this was his big estate here with a huge driveway, and I don't have pictures of how big this driveway really was, but it was really big. And so one time I decided to go ahead and bring the orange Cobra up there to show him because he was an awesome car guy. We talked. He had a shop. He wrenched on his own stuff. We'd go up to his house, and there'd always be something cool there, like this rear mount turbo Trans Am that his brother-in-law had. I think it was the LS2 that had the rear mount STS turbo here underneath the back of the car. And so it was just fun to always go over to his place and see stuff like this. And he even had a GT500 and a Nova, and both of those were in the car show. I actually made a video when I was down at the big car show, and both the cars were there, so I'll insert that clip right here. This is my friend's GT500, so he's from my town as well. This car has cams, a lot of stuff built by Lund Racing. He actually broke the secondary timing chain on it. Well, his son did. Doing donuts is what he told me, if I remember correctly, like beating off the rev limiter and broke a secondary timing chain. But he put it all back together and it worked fine. And really nice car, really loud, and he started it up for us. And this guy really knows how to drive. He has a lot of high horsepower cars and LS Kenny Bell sand rail and stuff like that. So really cool to see him and talk to him there. And so, like I said, I took my Cobra up to his house just to show him, and it was always fun to talk to him. He was a really awesome guy and really down to earth, and it was just a great experience for my friend to meet him as a client and have him as a consistent client to go detail their stuff. And so I'd always told him about my Cobra, so it was fun to take it up there and show it to him. And one of the perks of working with my friend for mobile detailing is when the Cobra would get dusty sitting in the garage, I would go down and take it to his house and open his trailer anytime I wanted, and I could wash the Cobra with spot-free drinking water and wash and wax soap. And it was just, he had all these perfect supplies for doing that. Had brand new microfiber towels all the time, and the Cobra was just beautiful and clean there. I never left it at his house, but I would just take it down there when I needed to. And like I showed in my first video, I had brought the Cobra home from Arizona, and we washed it at my house with his service, because we would go work together throughout the day, and sometimes he'd drop me off at home, and I'd be like, hey, can we pull the Cobra out and wash it? And he'd say, yeah, sure, let's do it. And that was how I paid off this Cobra quicker than usual. I just worked so hard to buy that Cobra, and it was working with him a lot is what made it possible for me to be able to buy the Terminator Cobra. And I remember as I'd be working with him and we'd be out washing and waxing RVs, and it was 100 degrees, and I'd be wringing out towels over my head and using a wet boonie hat, and just trying to stay cool. I remember specifically thinking about this Terminator because once I established with him that I could work enough hours to afford the Cobra, I went ahead and bought the car. And I remember as I worked with him so much, I kept envisioning the front chrome wheel of the Cobra and saying, not only do I want this to be mine, I want to own that wheel. I want to pay the car off so that's mine and it doesn't belong to the bank. I remember thinking, I want that Cobra badge to be paid for. I want it to be mine. I want to own it. But I also just remember thinking that chrome wheel and saying to myself, you really must want this car because I can tell that you're working this hard, so it better be worth it. And it was. And so I'd continue to go mobile detailing with my friend, and we came across this bright tangerine orange Mustang GT 96 convertible. This car was actually the exact car that was in my neighborhood when I was growing up, and I remember looking into this car and seeing the white seats and everything. And this was at one of the RV storage places where we went to go do someone else's RV, and this was there, and I talked to the owner, and it's fun to see this car and tell him that I had an orange Mustang and stuff now, and because I was a kid when they had bought this car brand new. And anyway, I have a whole story about the bright tangerine orange Mustangs, a playlist about them because I think they're pretty cool. Just like the Bullet, I had bought a red Mach 1 that I really liked to daily drive, and I took really good care of it, clay bar, wax, kept it clean. And there was other Mach 1s I saw around town, like this one from Minnesota originally, and it had a lot of rust and stuff underneath it. The paint was flaking off of it, so mine was a lot nicer than some of them. But mine had higher mileage. Mine's the one on the right. I added the honeycomb deck lid panel and the plasti dip on the bottom and SLP exhaust. And my twin brother and my cousin had red Mach 1s as well. So it was really fun to have these three Mach 1s together and enjoy them as cousins. And this again is the reason I could keep my orange Cobra tucked away, because I had this to daily drive and enjoy, and that would make it so my orange Cobra could be tucked away in the garage and I could get it out on nice weekends and have fun with it. But I didn't have to leave it out in the elements. I didn't have to drive it to work. I didn't have to drive it in the rain or anything. And so my car collection continued to grow, and it was fun to have all these Mustangs and have them for their various reasons. Some of them I enjoyed driving, and with the aspect that I could take them anywhere, leave them in a parking lot. Well, the others I felt bad about leaving them in a parking lot where, I'm just very protective of them. Not that I'm not protective of these ones as well, but I just loved having a nice daily driver. So we go over and hang out with my friend and my brother. This is at my brother's house, and his friend got a new GTR. So that was fun to go around. My brother went door to door with that GTR, actually with his yellow Cobra. It was pretty cool and impressive. Now, earlier in the series, I did talk about a silver '01 Cobra that was in town because that was one of the only Cobras around that was a new edge back when I was younger. And I actually did find the exact pictures of this car. I took pictures of it at a car show, so it was actually cool to see it. I know I had some more pictures of this car where the guy had put Terminator wheels on it, and I think they were 18s, but the license plate says Eleanor. I remember that too. Nice amber tail lights, but a beautiful Cobra. And I remember somebody had swapped out the shifter bag on this. It was kind of a chewed up leather when it used to be nicer, and I believe they had done that right before they sold the car. It's hard to tell in the picture, but that shift boot was kind of ratty and shredded, and it just didn't seem right for a low mileage Cobra. But nonetheless, cool to see these pictures of this '01 Cobra that I forgot I had taken. And so I did talk about it earlier in the series, so I just wanted to show it a little bit. And there's another silver Cobra. So this was the '01. Here is an '03 Cobra. And this one had actually appeared as a test car on the internet, and they had put the Whipple on it and a built engine and a lot of things, even though it was only a 20,000 mile car. And so he showed me the internet articles of the company that built it and the upgrades they did. I think they were a performance company in Texas. And so it was kind of a promotional company car. And the owner had told me that he noticed that it was a little more rough than what he thought it was. He had to travel to Texas and drive it all the way home. And he liked it, but he didn't seem super happy and pleased with it. Now, this car later went on to be sold to somebody else, and I talked to that owner, and I think it lost the engine and had to be rebuilt, and the guy put a lot of money into it, so it was kind of like a money pit in that case. But the cool thing about this car was the owner showed up at a local race event we had here in town, and so I took the orange Cobra up there and hung out with the family and set up the camp chairs, and we watched a bunch of racing. And I just really like this picture. I think it's classic. This is something that you just don't see, a family with an orange Cobra sitting enjoying the races. It reminds me of like an old picture you might see of a family at the racetrack with an old Boss 302 or Boss 429 or Mach 1 or something like that, where back then it was a little more popular, but then as time goes on you don't see these cars out in public as much anymore. And of course, I do see that Z06 in the back. I remember he really beat on that car, and he had a little trailer he pulled his extra wheels and stuff with. It was a total track car, and he was a cool older guy, and he's just like, I bought this thing to race it, and I'm just going to give it everything it has. And he was just really hard on it and raced the daylights out of it. But it's pretty cool to see in this picture. As time goes on, this is kind of an iconic photo for me. And my kids were little, and we were out having fun and going up to the races together and making memories. But back to that silver Cobra we were talking about that we saw up here at the races. It was just cool to see another Terminator around. And the guy actually traveled several hours to come here to race, which was kind of cool. And there's another screaming yellow Terminator that showed up as well. So here's a little bit of videos of this, and the silver Cobra actually snapped an axle. He was wheel hopping and he stayed in it too long. So you'll see the screaming yellow Cobra racing a 3-valve, and then you'll see the silver Terminator and the yellow Terminator racing, and that's when the silver one snaps an axle. Excited to see this race go down. Here in such a small town, you actually see two Terminators racing each other. It was pretty cool. The yellow one was pretty stock, and of course the silver one had a Whipple, so we were expecting the silver one just to gap him. On a side note, that yellow Terminator, it was a '04 Screaming Yellow. I saw it come up for sale years ago, and I remember when the guy bought it, it had some really interesting things like side louver windows and like the big huge snake on the front. And I want to say he had to get parts of it, if not the whole car, repainted. And anyway, so he put some work into it. And he actually bought the brand new VMP supercharger that's on my car right now, on my red Terminator. So he had bought it from a guy up north who had a Sonic Blue Terminator who I met. And the guy, it's a very long story, but basically the guy with the blue Terminator had bought a VMP 2.3 liter. That blower failed, so VMP sent him a brand new 265 liter Gen 3 blower. And then he got so mad about the VMP issue, he just went Whipple and bought a Whipple supercharger. And so he sold that new VMP to the guy with the yellow Cobra. And it was new with the tags on and everything. And then he decided he'd rather just put wheels and stuff on his Cobra. So he sold me the blower and put the money into wheels and stuff. So this group of Cobra owners was up in northern Utah, and you may have seen the white one that I had pictures of my orange Cobra with a lot earlier in the series. So my friend had sold it to the guy who owns it now up in northern Utah. So these guys would hang out together and go drive around and have fun. And so that was pretty cool to see. And the guy with the yellow Terminator, his girlfriend has a Bullet. You can see right next to it in the picture there. This is a true blue Bullet like mine, so it was kind of fun to see that car. I've never seen it in person, just in the pictures, and so that's pretty fun. But his Cobra had hood pins, and it had some things done to it, and he's taking really good care of it. And, you know, there's a cool picture of him next to Boosted GT, if you know who that is, who started out with an SN95 yellow GT, but he kept his name, and he ended up getting a Terminator, and it turned into a really fast car. So it's kind of cool to see that picture with a celebrity with the two screaming yellow Cobras. And speaking of celebrities with screaming yellow Cobras, I have to put the picture of my brother when these two met up at his house that same race weekend. But beautiful car. So when you see this yellow Terminator lined up next to the silver one up here at the drag races, there's a whole story behind that yellow Cobra as well, and it's kind of cool. I've known a lot of these cars and talked to the owners and made friendships with them and stuff, but when you see a car racing down the racetrack, you don't really understand everything it has behind it, like a whole history and why the guy bought it and how much he loves it and the work he's put into it. Now, at the time of this race, I believe the car still had the stock supercharger pulley on it. Later, he ended up putting a smaller pulley on it and a tune and everything. But here you're going to watch them both launch, and the silver one wheel hops and snaps an axle. So that was painful to watch. And, you know, that's what happens with independent rear suspension. If you have all that vibration from the wheel hop, it'll snap the axle. And, you know, there's things you can do to remedy it. You can put a full tilt boogie racing, or even other companies like Maximum Motorsports, and I think Steeda make the anti-wheel hop kits, and putting solid bushings in the control arms and the cradle for the independent rear suspension will help keep that wheel hop down. But you still have a good risk of snapping an axle with drag radials when they grip really hard. So anyway, it was kind of rough to watch, and I sat in my Cobra and watched him. You know, I was going to get out and help him push it, but they had plenty of help. And my brother was actually there with his yellow Cobra as well, and so he was able to go home and get a spare axle for him. So what are the odds you break an axle and somebody in town, in such a small town, actually has an axle? So that helped out a lot, and we helped him swap it out. That Torch Red 04 GT was one of his friends who came as well, and it was cool to see a group of Mustang guys there. And that red one was a nice lower mile GT, but the paint on the roof was actually bubbling from having salt damage, and they worked at a salt mine, and so he said that GT was sitting by the salt all the time and just had salt in the air, you know, and humid days and stuff, and so it just really ruined that car, and I saw it get sold later. So we were lucky to have a few racing events up at the airport. This is that green Bullet that I talk about a lot, and the one from my childhood. Here's a 99 Cobra. and you see some Corvettes there. My friend's Trans Am, that's my friend's Blue Z06 as well. And one time we were all hanging out and racing. We go down to lunch, go back to the races, and on the way back to the races after lunch, we were all driving back in a group, and I got up next to a black CTSV. And the owner of the V was a friend of mine who came up to the races, and they were all participating in the races that day. I didn't know him very well, but we were all going to lunch together and driving around, and then headed back to the races where we were all going to continue racing for the day. And I was in my orange Cobra, and we were just having fun and racing around, and we both went for it, and he got out ahead of me, and his car was turned up a lot. I don't know exactly what it had done to it, but it was probably faster than my stock Cobra. But I was hanging with him pretty good. I was just on his back quarter panel, and we were running pretty hard, and it was like a 40-mile-an-hour road, and all of a sudden a car up ahead just turned in front of both of us. And the car probably didn't realize how much speed we were accumulating and everything, and yeah, we were in the wrong, but they had turned right in front of us, and we both got on the brakes as hard as we could. And the CTSV was ahead of me just enough that I thought he was going to hit the guy, and I braced for impact, and I thought it was going to take out both our cars. We just didn't have anywhere to go, but luckily that car cleared off the road onto the other road just in time for us to go by. I just remember looking at the CTSV, and the windows were down, and there were some guys in the back of it, and we were all looking at each other like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. And I thought to myself, I could have lost the car that day, and obviously, more importantly, I could have got hurt, or they could have got hurt. But you look back at how these cars get wrecked, and that's the way it happens. You see a lot of these cars all smashed up from going too fast, and maybe somebody pulls out in front of you, or maybe the car doesn't stop as fast as you think it's going to, or there's just all sorts of reasons. But it was nice to still have the Cobra and be like, wow, I'm glad that the car's safe and that I didn't destroy the car being stupid. And young guys driving around in muscle cars, it just happens all the time. So I was very lucky. So we met up with the guy that had the silver higher mileage Terminator I talked about. Found a couple more pictures of that car, and he actually worked the same place I did. So I'd go out on break and look at this Terminator out in the rain, just sitting there, and it was a cool car. It came from Phoenix, and I even considered buying it at one point. So this is all of us over at my brother's house, hanging out and enjoying the cars, and he had a stack of paperwork with that silver Cobra that just showed everything that was done to it, all the receipts and everything. So it was a cool car, higher mileage and stuff, and I did a compression test on it. It was a little lower than I liked, and I ended up buying my red 10th anniversary instead, but it was still cool to hang out with Terminators. You just don't see them all the time. And so I took the Cobra out to dinner with my wife, parked by this Jaguar. It was fun to go drive it around on the nice days, and that's mostly what I did with it. Again, here we are at Walmart, the very few pictures of my car there, and I don't take it there very often. And when I do, I try to find a nice place to park. This time I'm parked within the lines, okay? But it's kind of funny for me to see these pictures of my orange Cobra at Walmart, because I just don't take it places like that very much. And you see the seats forward. I try not to leave the seat forward. It actually bugs me to have the seat in that position, and to think of it maybe crunching up the foam on the front bolsters and stuff if you leave it forward. But that just shows we had the family with us, and we would take the kids and we'd go places like Walmart in the car. I guarantee that after I took this picture, I walked over, opened the passenger door, and put the seat back. It's just the way I am. I know I've done that a ton of times. So I found a cool parking garage to go in, and there aren't many around here, but it looks good in there. And I was out driving around, and I had this picture. I actually looked for a long time to find this picture, and I finally found it. I just really like it because it's on one of my favorite roads that ends up going out by the lake, and I asked my wife if she wanted to drive the Cobra, and she finally said yes, because usually she's like, no, I don't want to do it right now, we have the kids, or we have this or that, or so yeah, she can drive stick shift, and she does all right in everything, but it's just kind of funny that you would think that she would be jumping at the opportunity, and I know a lot of people would be. I know a lot of people who are friends with me who follow the channel or my Instagram who would be like, anytime you let me know, I'll come drive that Cobra. And heck, I'd like to drive it more. But it's just kind of funny that I finally got her to drive the Cobra, so I took a picture of her doing it. And so I don't have very many pictures, but I do have a couple like this, and I did find this picture, so that made me happy. So I took these really nice pictures up by where my grandfather's house used to be. It was across the way. That's it, on top of the hill behind. And, you know, there's some really nice new roads here. And so to get up there, it was actually a dirt road, so I would park somewhere down below where I could see the car, and then I would walk up the hill. Usually if we were going to go visit, we would take the Tahoe and drive up the dirt road, but there were times where I wanted to go up and visit or something, and so I would take the Cobra and I would park it down below where I could see it, and I even had a set of binoculars up there I could look through and look at the car and keep an eye on it and everything. But these are cool pictures because you wouldn't know if I didn't tell you that that was my grandpa's house up on the hill. And that's that same spot. Earlier in the series, you may have remembered of my Cobra ripping up the hill. That footage was taken from that house. Here it is again. This is my orange Cobra going up this hill. I love that video. It's so cool. And another reason it's special that nobody would know is up on the hilltop there, you can see where the house is. And if you go straight down from that house, that steep side of the cliff there, all the way down to the bottom of the hill where the road is, my grandfather had to dig his own power, sewer, and water lines for that house. And as young kids, my brother, my older sister, and I had to go up there with shovels in 110 degrees and dig and dig and dig. It was like the movie Holes. It was nothing short of slave labor. And I remember as a kid having to go do that all the time, and I would watch all the cars driving up that hill with my friends going to the movies or going to get ice cream or going to do things, and we were always up there digging and digging and digging. And my grandpa would give us a bottle of hot water, like an old 2-liter bottle that had been sitting in the sun all day, to drink, and it was not a very good experience, but he taught us how to work. And so that was one of those experiences. And so I look at this picture and there's more to it than just a picture of my Cobra and the house in the background. There was a lot of work in my childhood on the side of that hill. And so it was really nice to take pictures and drive around on that new road. It was just a really nice day and a really nice time to be with the car and enjoy. So I went to the park and found a nice place to park on the end where, you know, nobody's going to ding the car or anything. And then drove the car around to another side of town with the family. And this is a really nice place to go. It has lava rock in the foreground and all the different landscapes. And they had built a new grocery store out this way, and so it was a good excuse to go drive out here. I haven't been out here very much, but it's been a while. And so look how nice that is. This is the parking lot in the grocery store. It has a very nice background, and you can just see a lot. The Cobra looking fantastic. I went to a place in my neighborhood and stood up on a wall where I could see the Cobra a little bit better and got some nice glamour shots up there. And it was just a really nice day. The sun was bright. It was just right. Sometimes the sun ruins pictures and it's better to take in a shady time, but this was just perfect. And that competition orange really pops. So just standing up there and looking at the car from the aerial view was so fun, and it looked great. And so I met up with my brother, and we used to get some old magazines. Here you can see I actually found this magazine at a store. It was actually a clothing store that just had a big metal wash tub full of old magazines, and it just turned out that it was the Motor Trend issue of when the '03 Cobra was debuted, and it has the red convertible in it. So I said, hey, let's meet up and go to this really nice parking garage, and we'll go up on top and bring our camp chairs, hang out with the Cobras. I have something to show you. So we went and hung out, and we saw that cool article about the Cobra, and we hung out and talked and looked at it together. It was a great time. And so it was easier to do that when there wasn't so much social media and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube videos to entertain. You had to go to the magazines. And so that was something we would do more often. And so it was nice to go on top of this parking garage and just hang out and talk and have camp chairs. I really enjoyed that. And so I'll have to do that more with him soon. But we would take the Cobras out on early mornings, and this next picture I really like. It's when I came back. I actually had taken the Mach 1 out this day, and I came back and opened up the garage door, and the sun coming in was so bright on that competition orange. And I know the camera kind of distorts it and makes it look kind of a light orange on the back of the car, but you just can't capture it sometimes with the camera. But you can see how bright the sun is. You can see it going through the windows onto the toolbox in the background. It was just so good looking, and I just thought that orange was so perfect, and it just brightened up everything. It was so cool. And so I would do that. So, you know, here's some pictures of the Mach 1 and the Cobra together, and that morning with the Cobra there in the garage after a nice morning drive. So really cool time, and we'll end this part of the series here with these pictures. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. There's more to come, and more history of the Cobra and more stories. And so if you've enjoyed it, I hope you subscribe and continue to enjoy these videos as I continue to make them and tell the story of my 2004 Competition Orange SVT Terminator Cobra.